Why are people saying you're not eating enough when you feel like the layer of body fat says otherwise? You may not be underfed, but you may be underfueled, and that's what's truly holding you back from building your shape and decreasing body fat. In this episode, I'm going to break down the difference between underfed and underfueled and how you can become well-fueled. Let's get into it. So if you've ever felt like not eating enough, I hear that, but it doesn't make sense to me, this episode is going to help you a lot. So there is a difference between underfed and underfueled. And let's talk about the difference between each of these and then how to become well fueled and why people say eat enough. So let's talk about underfed. Underfed really just means that you are eating less calories than you are burning per day, meaning you are not getting enough fuel in, so therefore you are underfed. So an example might be, let's say you're burning 2,000 calories on day per average, which that is typically what I see for my ladies who are lifting weights, especially lifting heavy weights. And let's say that you're consistently eating 1,500 calories for a long period of time, then that would be the definition of underfed. However, you're like, wait a minute, that would put me in a calorie deficit and therefore I would decrease body fat. That would be true, right? So that would be your textbook calorie deficit. And that would mean you're underfed, but you are decreasing body fat and it's intentional. However, that's not typically what's happening because we're like, no, I actually am not decreasing body fat and I'm being told that I'm not eating enough. It doesn't make sense to me. So what's actually happening is you're underfueled. So this means you might be eating 1,500 calories on most days, and this is whether you're tracking or not. A lot of ladies may do this intentionally and they're tracking, but so many I talk to are generally doing this just because of old habits, right? Or they're trying to be healthy and choose healthier options or trying to kind of restrict throughout the days or weeks. But then because they haven't been fueled first, they're starving. And then a few times per week, they either go out to eat and they overeat, or when they're at home or when they have a moment of weakness, they overeat, and then they offset all of that calorie deficit, and then they just stay the same, right? They aren't decreasing any body fat, and they might even be gaining some body fat, or they're just staying the same. So this is an example of being underfueled, right? Because you're technically being underfed until you're not, right, in that same week, and then you're just offsetting any progress you would be making. And it's really not optimal because then for 5 days of the week, you're like suppressing your metabolism and you are like not supporting your hormones because you're not getting enough nutrients, and then you're just offsetting that. So you're kind of like not supporting yourself from a health standpoint, and you're not supporting yourself from like a training standpoint. And then you're also not getting the benefit of decreasing body fat. And so it kind of just sets you up to be underfueled, right? That's a perfect example of it. So the same is like this, but with alcohol. So same thing where people are like either intentionally or not intentionally, like not eating enough, but then they're adding in a bunch of alcohol. So then they're offsetting any progress they would make. This also is the case for those who have been in a calorie deficit or under eating for a long period of time because they have slowed down their metabolism, whether, again, if they've been tracking macros, calories or not, if they just don't realize it, this happens too, right? So they've been under eating for long enough period where they've suppressed their metabolism, and therefore they're no longer in a calorie deficit, but they're still underfueled, right? They could be eating so much more and have more energy and get the benefits of it and be healthier, right? And really set themselves up to change their body composition. That's another example of being underfueled. The next that I see is when people undereat all day long because they're like trying to be good. And they're like, okay, I'm going to like be on top of it. And they start off great for breakfast and then they have their snack and lunch. But by the time they get home, either they are just overwhelmed or they're stressed and they haven't eaten enough all day, so they're starving. And this is when they feel like, oh my, I just need more willpower when I get home. But really their body's just starving. And so their body's gonna ask for more calories and more food. And they're just gonna go to a quick example. Typically it's gonna be quick carbs or processed foods that they have in their pantry because they're starving. And then they think, oh my gosh, I should really be on top of it tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be better, or next week I'll be better. This is another perfect example of just being underfueled, because then you're not strategically spreading out that food where it needs to be, and it's impacting blood sugars and blood sugar swings and potentially impacting hormones, and then it's not ideally laid out to support training. So again, just another example of underfueled. What else do I see? I see not eating enough protein, right? Not eating enough protein is a perfect example of being underfueled, because then you're like shooting for this goal of building muscle and decreasing body fat, but it's not optimized at the next layer down to be able to do that in the most healthy and quickest and most efficient and effective way. Or same thing applied with not eating enough carbs, especially for ladies who are lifting and training. And many people who are health conscious may have had a fear in the past of eating too many carbs, or they're confused on how much they should eat, so they try to keep it low. Again, limiting themselves when it comes to their training, performance, building muscle, and priming themselves to go into calorie deficit phase. I've kind of covered this, but nutrient timing and not strategically placing your nutrients before and after your workouts, that's another example of being underfueled to get the most out of that training and really set yourself up, build muscle, decrease body fat. And the last example I'll give is for those who are tracking their macros, but they're doing it where they just have a set of macros and they just stay at it all the time. And they maybe, typically I see they're like in a slight calorie deficit. So they then never give themselves the opportunity to build muscle, because then they're never eating enough to get the most out of the training sessions. They also then plateau, right? Because their metabolism suppresses to those calories. And so then they stop decreasing body fat and they're kind of just like stuck there and they don't know where to go. This is again a perfect example of being underfueled. So how do you become well fueled then? And the solution is to intentionally eat enough first. This means working your way up to consistently getting in enough calories and ideally enough macros that are specific to you each day, day in and day out. When you do that, it stops these random calorie overages where you feel starving and then feel like you have to, like, you don't have enough willpower and then you feel guilty. It stops that, right? Because when you get in enough nutrients day in and day out, your body doesn't scream for more. It doesn't scream for quick carbs. It doesn't have the sweet tooth. It doesn't have the urges when you consistently give your body enough. Also, when you are optimizing the specific macros of those calories, so the protein, carbs, and fats of those calories, and then you're optimizing the nutrient timing, meaning when you're placing it throughout your day in around your workouts, again, it's just setting you up to be well fueled to get more out of those workouts to build muscle. And then when you're eating enough, it's going to support your body to be as healthy as it can be, for support your metabolism, increase your metabolism, give you the actual building blocks of hormones to support hormone balance, give you more fuel. Literally, that is the energy. So you feel better day in and day out. And it also gives you more food freedom. So you have more flexibility and can improve your relationship with food and just your enjoyment of food in social life and everything that is tied to that, because you will have more of a budget, for lack of a better term, to work with. The number one reason, especially for my ladies who want to build muscle, that's the other thing I'd say. When you have the actual nutrients, when you're eating enough, you can much more easily build muscle. And lastly, why most ladies want to eat enough is because most ladies that I work with want to decrease body fat. And in order to decrease body fat, you want your hormones in a great place, you want your metabolism in a great place, you want to create leverage so you can go into a calorie deficit from a much higher point. So priming yourself to go into a calorie deficit means eating enough first. So I'm a huge proponent of eating enough. I see it work magic across the board, but it's not magic, it's actual science. With the ladies I work with in Create Your Shape, because of all the things that I've just laid out and talked about. And it's the first step I take my ladies through in Create Your Shape, but custom to them, right? Because eating enough isn't just a vague term where everyone eats 3,000 calories, right? It really does mean custom to you. And as you've heard from this episode, 99% of my ladies are not eating enough. They may not be underfed, but they are underfueled, right? And so we want to solve for that first because of the positive benefits you get just across the board in your shape, in your health, in your energy levels, in your day-to-day enjoyment of food. It's like a win-win-win. And every single time my ladies are like, oh, I'm never going back. I will never go back to that. So that is what I have for you today. Underfed versus underfueled, and to make sure you get well fueled. All right, I'll see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.